Hi guys, it's Rory here and welcome to the Football Heritage Podcast. Hope you're enjoying everything that our fantastic podcast has to offer so far this year. Firstly, I'm here to tell you that our brand new patron exclusive feed, the Football Heritage Extra, is now live. You can subscribe for £3 per month and that gives you access to an additional exclusive podcast every Thursday. We've designed our patron exclusive content to be a wee bit more casual, more niche and full of exclusive insights and interviews with our friends, contributors and other people working within football. Links to subscribe are in all of our episodes, show notes as always. Looking forward to seeing you over there. Secondly, if you enjoyed last week's show, it would mean the world to us if you could leave a review on Apple and Spotify, or if you're listening on YouTube, a comment and a like. It really helps the algorithm pick us up and does so much for pushing us in front of new listeners every week. Please remember as well to leave a comment on our episodes on whichever platform you're listening on. One of our favourite things is engaging with you guys and being able to speak with you about the conversations that we're having every week. Lastly, please remember to visit our website to read our articles and see what other projects we're working on at the moment. Or if you like, come and join us on our social media for daily posts and content related to the heritage of football across the world. We're always up for a chat, so if you have any questions, suggestions or feedback, feel free to DM us on any of our socials or email us at hello@footballheritage.co.uk. I think that's about everything that I need to plug at the moment. Thanks once again for listening. Enjoy the show. Hello and welcome back to the Football Heritage Podcast. I'm your host, Rory Rice, and I'm joined first of all by Michael Bochel.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you, Michael. Thanks very much for joining us. And I'm also joined by Graeme Macleod.
Hi, Rory. Thanks for inviting us on.
Not at all. Thanks very much for coming on, guys. It's a pleasure to have you on tonight. We are going to be talking about one of the most exciting football clubs in the entirety of Scotland at the moment, and that is Nairn County Football Club. Really a staple of Highland League football and have been for well over 100 years now. And I'm personally excited to dive into this story because, like I was just saying off air to the guys, and as I touched on in the Inverness Thistle episode last year, Highland League is something that I have really, really little exposure to and little experience of. So I'm really looking forward to finding out all about Nairn as a town, Nairn County, the football team, and what it is that's actually making this football club so special. Michael was the one that got in touch to kickstart this episode. He's looked after the communications, marketing and merchandise for Nairn County for the last 5 years, but in his day job, he's the head of marketing and partnerships for the Glasgow International Comedy Festival and the creator of the Scottish Football Kick-Off. He was also the head of digital at the Scottish FA at one point as well. So Michael, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit more about yourself first of all?
Yeah, thanks for having us on, Rory. Yeah, as you touched on there, I've lived a life in Scottish football for a wee while. As you say, head of digital at the Scottish FA. And some fun times there. I didn't really qualify for anything while I was there until Euro 2020, but enjoyed it back as a fan as well, and created the Scottish Football Kick-Off a year ago, which is a daily email that curates the actual Scottish football news and not the clickbait or rumour, and try not to talk about VAR in it, but it's free every morning, gets sent out at 7am on a weekday, and just under 3,000 subscribers at the moment, so going well, just coming up for a year.
Brilliant, that's amazing. And yeah, the Scottish Football Kick-Off's fantastic. It's something that has been a staple of my inbox for a wee while now, and I would recommend any of our listeners who want to sign up to go and check it out. It's very good. Graeme has been a fan, youth player, and is now director of football in Nairn County, which is an absolutely incredible CV. It's a love affair with a club that spans several decades, and he's also the de facto club historian, having co-authored Nairn's 100 years in the Highland League history books. Graeme, tell me and your listeners a little bit more about you and your role with the club.
So been involved with the club in one way, shape or form pretty much my entire life. I can remember going to my first game when I was I think I was 5 years old. And that was just really the kind of start of, as you say, the love affair. That was in kind of the early 90s, and through the early to mid 90s, it was very much turning up at games in hope more than expectation that you might get a result, and the team would plug away for a half or an hour or so and then concede a goal and go behind, and then that would be and then the sort of capitulation from there would inevitably follow, was kind of how the cycle went. And then obviously as I grew older, I was in secondary school and there was this new thing called the internet coming along, and the club never really had anyone that understood how these kind of things work, and I kind of feel on the other side of that now with all the kind of TikTok generation and all these sort of things that are kind of a wee bit above my generation. But yeah, so I kind of got involved in helping set up the clubs, or set up a club website back in the kind of early 2000s. Used to write match reports, etc. On the games, into the social media age, set up what's now the club's social media channels. for 10 years now has been officially in the role of a director of football on at the club as well. So where I've kind of stepped away from the media side of it, if you like, and I'm more involved in that football inside as well. So that role is based around really just giving the management team and the coaching staff as much support as possible to allow them to focus on what's important to them, i.e. Putting on suitable training sessions and picking a team to win matches on a Saturday.
Fantastic. I guess it was that kind of like Wild West era of the internet when it first kind of became a thing, and you could go on and find absolutely everything about it. But I think like a lot of people might be listening to this and thinking like for Nairn County to have someone who's like writing dedicated match reports and putting them out there is incredible. There's a lot of clubs probably of a historically larger size in Nairn County who don't do that. So it's amazing that the club has volunteers and a community around it that are willing to give their time to do that. And I think that's going to be one of the focuses of the conversation today, is really how Nairn County, the town and the community are one and the same. And it's how they interact with each other that makes this football club in this place so special. Just for our listeners who might not be aware, Nairn is a town in the north of Scotland, sitting more or less next to the Moray Firth. It's got a population of about 12,000, but the way that the football club has positioned itself within the town is quite frankly phenomenal, in my opinion. Nairn County founded in 1909, and they joined the Highland League in 1919.
So there's a bit of an anomaly there. They actually joined the Highland League in 1914, literally weeks before the First World War broke out. So we were members of the league without actually kicking a ball in it for 5 years. And then, first game was in 1919.
Fantastic. It's that 100 years of consistency within the Highland League, being a regular within the setup, that's really given Nairn that pedigree within the league setup. And we'll touch a little bit on why the Highland League is different in itself. But Graeme, as club historian, tell me and our listeners where Nairn decided to get their badge, their colours, their nickname, etc. from. Tell us about the origins and the founding of the club.
So the origins go back, I think the origins of football in Nairn kind of go back to around about the 1880s. And there was iterations of Nairn County between then and 1909 and the founding of what is known as, or what is the club now. There was a Nairn County in existence that then fell out of existence, but it kind of intertwined with another club called Nairn Thistle. So effectively what would happen is Nairn County would crop up for a couple of years and then disappear from existence, and then a Nairn Thistle would appear and again fall out of existence. And what we found was that, or what my late colleague Bill Logan, who researched that part of the book, found was that the office bearers and such, like the people behind the scenes at the club for Nairn Thistle, were the same names as were for Nairn County. So we're not quite sure, or never quite got to the bottom of exactly, was there a kind of a thread between the two clubs. But as I say, going back to kind of 1880s was really the kind of origins of football as we know it today in Nairn, and our kind of earliest traces that we were able to find of that. And then, as I say, that then took us into the founding of what's known as Nairn County Football Club today in 1909, which then eventually gained membership after some failed attempts of the Highland League, and then as I touched on, within a mere matter of weeks, the war broke out, and we were left kicking our heels for 5 years on the sidelines with no football being played for obvious reasons. From I think September 1919 was when that particular their season started after the war ended, and we played our first match in the Highland League. So that's kind of what the origins of the club. In terms of the colours, the colours have deviated. Again, obviously quite difficult to pin down in the early days, given the lack of colour photography as well. Yeah. As far as we're aware, the very first Nairn County kit is very much like an Argentina style strip, a sort of sky blue and white striped number is what, as far as the research that we did was able to uncover. We then played in the kind of early decades in the Highland League in a sort of gold and black kit, think Berwick Rangers type colours, a dark yellow goldy colour. That then switched to red and white throughout the sort of 1960s. So the first colour photographs that we have are of that era, and obviously there's still people alive today who played and supported the team as fans in that era that can tell you that. So you got first-hand account of seeing the team playing in red and white throughout the I think late 50s into the 60s, and then the kit was changed again in the summer of 1975 to the existing colours of yellow and black, and that was changed at the behest of the then manager Innes MacDonald. The reason being that too many other clubs in the Highland League played in red, and he wanted us to stand out as a team and have our own unique identity of the yellow kit. And obviously that first season was the one and only year that we've successfully won the Highland League Championship. So obviously a good omen to kick off, certainly changing the colours for that season.
Has there always been a dolphin on the badge?
No.
Just wondered if that was a recent addition or...
No, so the first kind of badge that we had, so obviously like the kits in the 60s and the 70s, from the team photographs we have, didn't have badges on them. But
yep.
I did find a photo where the players had kit bags in 70, I think it would have been 77. So we became, another little anecdote is we became the first Highland League club to fly to an away fixture. We flew to, we played Wick. Wick weren't in the Highland League at the time, but they played in the Scottish Qualifying Cup. So the team flew by air, and there's a photo of a couple of the players because they literally, from the photograph, literally jumped however they were transported back to Wick Airport in the strips and on the plane back to, and I believe the plane only had enough seats for the players. The committee and such like had to go up on the bus. So so there's a photograph of them with their kit bags with a badge on it, which is like an NCFC lettering where the letters kind of overlap. It's something that we've used in our Club 1914, which is a supporters initiative, and the badge for Club 1914 incorporates that. We then had a badge with a tree, an alder tree, which is kind of a tree that's found in Nairn on it, and that was kind of in the, I think, late 80s into the 1990s, and then late 90s the dolphin appeared, or the change was made to the dolphin badge, which then Michael, in the most recent iteration of the badge, has refined. But the origins of the dolphin trace back to almost about 30 years ago.
Yeah, and the dolphins on it, I think, I'm guessing, obviously I was young, but I remember my first Nairn County shirt had the old tree badge on it. But yeah, the Moray Firth is known to have dolphins in it, and obviously sitting on the Moray Firth, and there's a chip shop in the town called the Dolphin, and so there is a bit of an association there, and yeah, as Graeme said, the badge got a bit of a refinement and refresh, and actually one of the things, because that original badge that Graeme said with the dolphin on it actually had 1914 on it as the year that the club was founded, but as Graeme was touching upon, and the history books show that the actual most recent formation of Nairn County was 1909, hence why the badge now reflects that, and a bit of a refinement to the dolphin, and an addition of the bandstand, or a representation of the bandstand, which is a landmark in Nairn, which is anybody from Nairn would recognise the bandstand if they saw a photo of it.
Yeah, it's all those wee nuances that I love from like the early years of Scottish football history, because like you've got clubs who founded when people were sat around the table and they said, okay, this is our founding date, and then you've got clubs who claim they're founded as when they played their first fixture and stuff like that. So you're always discovering new things, and a lot of the time things will come up about smaller clubs where they'll find out that actually they played a fixture earlier than they thought their founding date was. But yeah, again, like it's all the things that we want in a football badge is that attachment to place, what makes it recognisable and what's going to connect people to that. And I think, again, in terms of the Highland League, it's different to how, I suppose, developed alongside football in the Lowlands. You guys will be best placed to tell me about that just from your experience following it, but my perception of the Highland League was that it kind of sat somewhere between the junior leagues and the professional leagues, but was very much a league in and of itself for a very, very long time.
Yeah, I think maybe the difference between the structure, certainly a footballing standard in the Highlands, is very the Highland League has always been stronger than the juniors. Whereas I don't think you can maybe say that about the leagues down in the Central Belt, where you've got the East of Scotland and where the East of Scotland juniors sat, and where the West of Scotland or South of Scotland League and the West juniors sat. I think the West juniors clubs were probably a lot stronger, or there were clubs in those leagues that were a lot stronger. I'm thinking of Auchinleck, Talbot in the West, and Linlithgow and Bonnyrigg in the East that were maybe stronger than the clubs in the East of Scotland League. I think in the Highlands it's a lot more, piecing that pyramid together in terms of a footballing standard would have been a lot easier when reconstruction did happen 15 years ago, in that, the Highland League clubs, not exclusively, but the majority of which would have been of a better standard in terms of playing side, facilities wise, etc., than their junior counterparts, which then, as I say, making that pyramid, then having the Highland League sit above the junior leagues towards the east and Aberdeen, and also there's a North Caledonian League to the north as well, which obviously you mentioned Inverness Thistle, where they play in that level. So I think in terms of facilities and standard of team, I think the Highland League has always been the strongest in the region. I don't think there's any doubt about that.
And I think just jumping in there as well is that, the Highland League was founded in 1893, but the first, league representation from anywhere north of Aberdeen wasn't until 1994. So, obviously you had the Inverness Thistle guys on before, and Ross County joined then, and then a little bit later you get Elgin City and Peterhead. But up until that point, the only football in the Highlands and in that Nairnshire and places like that was the Highland League. So it really was its own established football league with a lot of history, a lot of tradition, but just there was no access to league football at that stage. Obviously the pyramids brought by that, and the pyramids not being fully embraced, shall we say, within the Highlands, and I know people within our own fan base who would quite happily see the Highland League sit outside the pyramid and be distinctly it. So there's always those sort of nuances that come with the Highland League. But yeah, again, as saying that I straddle both. I'm based in Glasgow but grew up in Nairn and obviously involved with the club, and can see it, from the Central Belt bias, as it might be, referred to many times. But, there's probably a lot of historic reasonings for that. And in that, when you are up in the Highlands, you do feel a bit cut off from the rest of Scotland at times. And that's been reflected in football historically as well.
Yeah, that's a really good point. The Highlands and the Lowlands are culturally very, very different places. I hadn't heard someone speak Gaelic in person until summer last year, when I went up to see Alaba take on Cornwall in the Celtic Nations Cup. And that's just part and parcel of what life is like here. It is very, very culturally different. And you're right, Michael, that the development of football mirrors that in a lot of ways. And just to touch on something that you said there, Graeme, a lot of the times that clubs would kind of come up against each other would be in the Scottish Cup, but then you had the Scottish Qualifying Cup. And the structure of that changed so many times, from being regional to being completely open. And again, for listeners, the Scottish Qualifying Cup was basically the tournament you would play to then get access into the Scottish Cup. But I remember actually, I think this would have been just at the beginning of this season, one of our local junior teams actually played Brora Rangers. It's just incredible how little exposure a lot of fans in the Lowlands actually get to Highland League teams out with the professional setup.
Yeah, I think the Scottish Cup as well, obviously. So you mentioned the different structures. So in my living memory, the qualifying cup was the 4 semi-finalists of that tournament. So it was like it was early season as well. So your first round game was maybe only your second or third game of the season. So it was very much, you're straight into one of the most important games of the season, and you had to be one of the top teams to qualify. And then I think in those days, and Michael mentioned there before 1994 when Inverness, Cally Thistle and Ross County emerged into Scottish leagues, I think there was some good, but maybe that's what, looking historically back, that's maybe what won some of these clubs the vote on that occasion, when Cally had some good runs, and in particular in the Scottish. So, and then of course the qualifying cup was scrapped. The concept was scrapped in 2007. So since then, every Highland League club who's a full Scottish FA member and holds a club licence is eligible to participate from round one of the competition. So, so there is that there is that crossover, if you like, and that chance to play in the national competition, as much as the round one is all non-league, whereas back in the qualifying cup days, round one would be pitched in with obviously the qualifiers from the south area, but also the or Division 3 as it was, clubs. But yeah, so you're in there where you've got to beat a non-league opponent, and then you get yourself into the next round where you're in with your League 2 clubs and so on and so forth from there. And we have seen Highland League clubs do well in recent years. I think Brora most notably got the last 16, didn't they, in the last couple of years?
Beat Hearts as well.
Beat Hearts, yeah. Fraserburgh have drawn Rangers twice at home and away, and Bucky have had a draw away at Celtic as well. So opens up these kind of once in a life, well, twice in a lifetime if you're Fraserburgh, opportunities for clubs and players to experience that. But yeah, but I think it's still earned, if you like. You know what I mean? You've still got to beat the teams in front of you. It's not like Celtic, and it's not like it's everybody's in the hat from round one. You still have to get there. So, but it does give you that something different. It is exciting. You're to get to the semi-final, as I say, of the qualifying cup. You're having to win 2 rounds or 2 or 3 rounds against teams you play every week anyway. Whereas round one we could have, halved in the past. Like this year, for instance, Drew Berwick Rangers away. We've played the likes of Selkirk when they were on the go in round one. So even as much as it's non-league teams, Preston Athletic, Linlithgow, these sorts of clubs. So, it's good to experience hosting other teams and pitting your wits against teams from other leagues.
Something a wee bit different. Of course, obviously, Fraserburgh have previous for a big Scottish Cup shock in the 50s when they beat Dundee. But more importantly, Nairn also embarked on their own Scottish Cup run not too long ago. Think back, it was 2011, 2012? 2012,
2013.
Yeah, that must have been class.
Yeah, so the first round in that, as I mentioned, Preston Athletic away, beat them 2-0, down with 10 men down at Preston Pans. And then, you're in with the League 2 clubs, and at the time we drew Clyde. I think it's still League 2 a bit.
Yeah,
I remember when Clyde and Cally Thistle were going head-to-head for promotion to the SPL, if it was at the time, and they very nearly pipped Inverness at the post. So, a club with good heritage and pedigree, and not a club that has just, floated around in League 2 for decades. So, go down and play at Broadwood as well, an all-seater stadium. So that was a unique experience as well. So, we drew the first game there down. We drew down there 3-3. We were never behind in that game, so you sort of came away thinking, have we missed our chance here? It was Clyde equalised quite late on. But 3-3, so a bit of a thriller at Broadwood, and then a week later at Nairn it was 3-2. We beat them 3-2. Again, topsy-turvy game where we were behind twice on that occasion, and then fought back and equalised, I think, with 10 minutes to go, and scored the winner with 2 or 3 minutes to go, just when you were sort of attentions were turning to potential extra time. So that was a tie, a 3-3 draw and a 3-2 win. So you think going into the next round, you think, well, probably not going to get as much drama as that. But and we drew, so we were drawn against Forfar away from home again. So Forfar, so we got up a level again. Forfar were in League 1 at the time. Went down there and 3-0 down early in the second half. So you think, that's kind of curtains here, but then pulled it back to 3-1 quite shortly early in the second half, and then 3-2 I think with about 10 or 15 minutes to go, and then 3-3 in the last minute, one of the last kicks of the game to get back from 3-0 down to 3-3, and then took them up to Nairn for a replay, and you think 3-0 down again, give him a 3-0 head start again, and then scored a couple of goals, pulled one back and then pulled another one back, and you think, oh my God, here we go again, I just remember at the time thinking they're looking at my watch and it's like bang on 90 minutes, the referee blew full time. You think, when did you ever see that? So we went out in the round 3, but it was a good exposure. It gives you so much momentum as well, like as a club. Like I think if you were to look at the fixtures dotted in between them, I don't think we barely lost a game from that first round. So the first round is obviously like end of September, so all the way through to sort of November time, by the time you're playing a replay. We won a North of Scotland Cup final in that window as well, so it gives you so much momentum and gives you something extra to play for and look forward to, and brings that, I know it's a bit of a cliche, but it brings that extra 10% out of the players as well. And
yeah, it's true.
I was looking back actually at we'd actually have a bigger attendance for the 2 replays as we had for the first games as well. So we're drawing a bigger crowd at Nairn for the replay against Clyde than were the crowd that was at Broadwood for the first game, and the same for the Forfar tie. We had more at Station Park, or the real Station Park, should I say? Our Station Park for the replay. There's actually a station beside ours, so for the replay than in the original tie at their Station Park down there. So yeah, like I say, it's good for the players to pit their wits against these players. The management, Jim Duffy was a manager of Clyde, Dick Campbell was a manager of Forfar.
Absolutely, yeah.
Really good managers of great careers. And obviously as well the fans. So the supporters in the town turn out in force for you when you've got these ties. So it is really special, and it's really exciting every year when the first round draw for the Scottish Cup's made. It's one of the, just the draw itself is one of my personal highlights of the season, to see who we're going to be facing, and you're either deflated because it's maybe someone that you think you might struggle against, or you've got a bit of quiet optimism. So it is really important to clubs at our level, and it is really special, and it creates memories that last a long time.
Yeah, there's nothing more disappointing when you draw a Highland League club in the first time of Scotland. I think this season, as Graeme said, we drew Berwick away, which was brilliant. You're like, all right, that's a great away. There's actually a Scottish Cup history with Berwick as well. But the season before, we drew Clach away. So it was like the shortest journey we could possibly go on.
Yeah,
we beat Berwick for the first time, and it was at the third attempt. Having played them three seasons or three occasions before that, just so kind of 56, 57 season after an unentertaining 5-5 draw at Nairn. So the fences on top that day, obviously. We lost in the replay down there, and then 67-68 season we lost 2-0 down there, and in the 68-69 season they beat us at 2-0 at Nairn. So so it was a wee bit of club history as well, and the first team I believe from the Highland League to win a Scottish Cup tie in England as well. So it was a really enjoyable one to be a part of.
It's kind of like what you said as well earlier, Graeme, that I think, and I agree with you as well, that it speaks to the strength of Highland League teams that they're able to do that in cup competition. And like I said, I agree with you, because let's be honest, a lot of the junior teams, probably as they were when they were still juniors, are much stronger than a lot of SPFL 2, SPFL 1 sides. Certainly a lot stronger. They have better finances, and they're bigger clubs historically. And I think it speaks to the strength of Highland League teams that they're able to do that as well. I suppose just kind of coming back to Nairn as a whole, tell us a little bit more about Nairn and what formerly would have been Nairnshire before it obviously became part of the wider Highland Council Authority.
Yeah, look, Nairn's got a bit of a rich history. It's a royal borough. One time had a castle. It was burnt down by Robert the Bruce in the 14th century. So I think there was questions over whether Nairn was under English rule or not. So the castle wasn't to survive. We're on the Moray Firth. It's an historic fishing port, which was the big industry. Introduction of railway, given our location and the scenery and everything that goes with it, became quite a big tourist place. It was Charlie Chaplin's favourite holiday destination back in the day. Got class nickname, Brighton of the North, and you can go throughout history with Nairn and find bits of interesting things, and you look around into that Nairnshire area and you've got Codder and everything that goes with Macbeth and the castle there, and Aldern. I think if you're into your history of witches and things like that, I think Scotland's most famous witch, Isabel Gowdy, was from Nairn or Nairnshire, and everything that went with that as well. So I think when living in Glasgow, I can't go in a taxi, and if the taxi driver asks me where I'm from, I say Nairn, and he goes, yeah, no, I've been on holiday there, for a long time, and still is. We've got a big holiday park up in Nairn, and it is a popular place nowadays. More known for its golf, probably. Two really good courses, Nairn Golf Club in the top 100 courses in Scotland and the UK, and Nairn Dunbar Golf Club, which I always say if we only had Nairn Dunbar, we'd get a lot more attention than it probably does, because it's a great course. And you mentioned there, the population had a boom in the 70s. Graeme might correct me wrong, with McDermott's oil rig fabrication yard, and it's had a bit of another boom with some house building and various things, and it is a popular place to live now. And the club, certainly wants to play a part of that community in a lot bigger role than perhaps it has in the past, and a lot of work going on behind the scenes at the moment in time with the club.
It's fantastic. I mean, I've only ever driven through Nairn on the way from Aberdeen to Inverness. And again, in terms of the population, where I'm from, there's about maybe 25,000 people or something like that. And I would say we're in the sticks. Do you know what I mean? It is a different way of life. It's a different way of living. But like you say, there's so many similarities with other places in the UK. And it's all this history and all these things that breed the distinct identity. How does that manifest within Nairn County Football Club in terms of it aligning itself with the community, but also, what is the identity of Nairn and the football club?
Yeah, look, I think we've gone through a bit of change. Graeme talked, I remember my first games were in the 90s as well, and, big record defeats and everything else that went with that. And then there was a bit of a money put into the club in the noughties, and that carried through to about 2016, and that brought success. It brought trophies, cup competitions, but in 2016, the previous directors stopped being involved in the club, and at that point, the club's facing an uncertain future, and what really at that point the town rallied round the club to make sure that it was still going to be part of the town, and went through a rebuilding phase, if you like, well, more stabilisation than rebuilding, to be fair. And Ronnie Sharp, who club legend as a footballer, and had a previous stint as manager, comes in and helps really cement the position of the club and kick it on a bit. And then local people stepped in and joined the committee and really sort of helped drive the club forward. And then we had a change of chairman probably about 4 years ago, change of management as well, and that kicked the club on a little bit further. But progress is, as we know, and it's a very cheesy thing to say, I'm very aware of this, but it's never a straight line. Been a couple of wobbles on the way in the last couple of years. The now chairman came in last year at a time that was probably needed a bit of leadership, who's now manager Wayne McIntosh, who again probably wouldn't be unfair to call him a club legend in terms of local lad, came through the youth ranks, played for the club, hundreds of appearances for the club, has become manager, and been going through that sort of stabilisation on the field, rebuilding on the field. And the club has put a lot in place behind the scenes, especially in the last 12 months. But to be fair, going back the last few years, I came on board when I left the Scottish FA, which was 2021, the summer of 2021, and tried to take a lot of what my background is in marketing and sports marketing and try and instill that into the club, and try to kick the club on. And identity and philosophy and whatever, all these sort of buzzwords can get thrown around football. But if you don't have some core values that you stick to and believe in, then you kind of need that for direction. And so when putting a lot in place, what I'd been working to with the club, and if you go on our homepage, we revamped our website a few years ago to try and tell a story more about the club and do more. But we want to be brave. We want to stand. There's 18 teams in the Highland League. We want to stand out and do our own thing, and be very near. And we're very proud, which is never one of our values, is proud of the town. We're proud of the club, and we want to be community driven. You look across Scottish football, and whether it's the Spartans, Stennismuir, Devonvale in the Highland League, they've all got great community setups. We had a youth pathway, that started at, again, correct me if I'm wrong, Graeme, about under 14 level for, and we still got that youth pathway there. But what's happened in the last few years is two independent youth football organisations in the town, which was Nairn Fire at the time and Nairn Soccer Sevens, which had been going on a lot longer, came under the Nairn County umbrella, and that has just been building on, and grand plans there. And everything that we have been doing over the last few years is tried to be more transparent with fans and, improve communications with what we're doing, whether it's through emails and various other things. We've done club surveys for a number of years, and a lot of what's been taken out of those club surveys has also, influenced what we're doing kit-wise and what we know about what people think of the town, what people think of the club, etc. And the heritage of Nairn and being proud of Nairn and celebrating the town of Nairn has been, the centre and integral a lot of what I've been trying to do. I look after our kits, and the kit designs. And one of the things that came in is that Graeme had some success with some custom kits in the past. He had it was a away shirt, wasn't it, Graeme, the black one, that celebrated the first ever cup win, that Nairn had in 1920, the Elgin and District Cup, and wanted to do more of that, celebrating the town as a whole and the club history. So going fully custom we've got free kits, and at Highland League level you can maybe argue you don't need a third kit, but we've tried to do something, very worthwhile with ours, and create a charity third kit. If you start with the home, each of our kits, where we can, will be a 2-year cycle. So it's not, again, we're a Highland League, we don't need to change our shirt every season. So the first home shirt I was involved in had the bandstand, which I referenced before, on the home shirt. And then this season we have got the 50th anniversary of winning the Highland League. So all the player names from that squad, even the youth players that were part of the wider squad, are named on that shirt, which is pretty cool and allows, people to learn a little bit of the history and give recognition to those who are rightly so club legends. Our away shirt is always one that I like to have some sort of reference to the town and the town's history. So the first away shirt that I was involved in was a red one, and red was by design, given the history of red shirts at Nairn. And it had every street name of the IV12 postcode, which is the Nairn postcode, on the shirt. And then that has gone transition. So the second one we've had is the one we've got just now, which is a black and pink detailing on it. And it's got the Moray Firth and a dolphin and a reference to the old Zulu-style fishing boats that used to be in the Nairn Harbour in the 1800s. And then we'll be doing we're due another away shirt this summer, and that will have a strong nod to what Nairn's about, which I'm quite excited about. And then our third shirt, as I said, that has become our charity third shirt. The first charity that we did was Team Hamish, which is a Nairn charity with a very tragic backstory in terms of young Hamish had passed away with illness and cancer. And I mean, that's sad in itself, only for his mum to then pass away with cancer not long after. And, the whole purpose of the charity was set up for Team Hamish was to build a legacy for Hamish in the town, revamp what we had was a paddling pool down at the link. So anybody that's been on holiday in there will know the links down by the beach, and for years and years had a paddling pool, but that's now a very colourful rainbow themed splash pad, which, because all the money had been raised by Team Hamish, and as a club we knew that they were going into a phase 2, and we really wanted to support Sam and all the family with those plans. And so we got a shirt mocked up that was based on I got a guy called Gavin, who a Morton fan, so actually no connection to Nairn, but really good at doing shirt concepts, and he was more than delighted to get involved with us. And I gave him a brief, of this Team Hamish is what we want to do, and Gavin's work was incredible. I've never ever, no matter in my history of my career, not gone back with changes, but Gavin found this picture of a really rainbow colour chevron dress that was in the Team Hamish, and took the shirt design and made that, and went on to becoming our biggest selling kit of all time. £10 from every adult shirt sale went to Team Hamish, at £5 from every kids sale went to Team Hamish as well, and we had that for 2 years, and that's moved into, we're just coming to the end of our 2 years with Mikey's Line, which is a very important suicide prevention charity in the Highlands, which has again stemmed and been created out of tragedy, unfortunately, and there's close connections to people in the club with the charity, and it's again a blue with a bumblebee design on it, and quite, the designs stand out and prove really popular. But for us, it's about trying to help with the charity objectives and strengthening their messaging, and obviously raising money along the way. So always try to do little bits that always tie in, obviously, into the values of being, whether it's community driven, brave, proud, they all tie back into there. And plans for another local Nairn charity will be our next one. I'm again excited to reveal that over the summer as well, and already thinking about forward to the home shirt the following summer, and hoping to actually reference this time, have a wee subtle nod to Nairn Thistle on it potentially, and look, everything that in the last 5 years that have been done, if you actually look at across our kits or with goalkeeper kits, there's always been some sort of red in it, whether it's been a away shirt or a goalkeeper shirt, and there's also been blue in it. So if you look at, we had sky blue goalkeeper shirt, we've had Team Hamish, and the Mikey's Line shirts have always been sort of that base of blue as well. So again, nods to the past. So that we're not... we never sort of forget that, and I think we were always keen to do that. I know Graeme is, the captain's armband that gets given out has got the older badge on it that Graeme was referencing from that 70s, and the boot bags and stuff like that as well, or a version of it. So there's always wanting to keep that history and tradition of the club throughout the years, and just finding modern ways of incorporating that into what we do.
Yeah, well, I mean, kits is something that Nairn have really led the way on, not just in the Highland League, but in Scotland generally over the last few years. We'll come on to talk about that. I think for me that the important thing is that in all your kit designs, you're looking to add elements of place, localism, local identity, things that people know and can attach themselves to. And what's quite nice about this is that Nairn County is already quite central to the community of Nairn and the rest of Nairnshire, just by virtue of being. And it's quite easy for a lot of clubs to take that for granted, but Nairn don't. So they're almost doubling down on a lot of ways and making sure that people know that they are the club for Nairn by doing these things and making these football kits that people can attach themselves to in that way. Just a quick word on Stennismuir as well, and I think this is kind of more to do with how football clubs can be good at doing the community things. Like you've said, being a football club, obviously no matter what level you're at, you're in a reasonably privileged position. Obviously, you've got clubs who are struggling and things like that, but at the end of the day, people are paying money to come and see you every weekend, whatever that might be. And a lot of football clubs shy away from doing their outreach and charity work at different levels. So to see a club which is further down the pyramid system at Tier 5 doing all these things for local charities is absolutely amazing, when a lot of other clubs probably wouldn't bother their arses doing it, or would maybe do it just so that it was to actually tick a box, as opposed to doing it because they know they're good community initiatives. Like, it's that kind of community outreach that a football club, in my opinion, is meant to do, and that sort of benefit that it's meant to bring to the community, like supporting mental health initiatives, like making sure people have a place that they can come and know that they're safe and that is their club.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Graeme will know more being in the town at the time during COVID, but there's a lot of similar initiatives happening with the club in terms of, the shopping side of things, the recognition of local community and supporting as much as the town as we could during that time.
Yeah, we did a bit of so the players, members of the committee going round. So we'd a post on the social media page with an email address, and just invited people to email your list of items that you'd like from the shops and your address, and we'll get it to you. We also picked up prescriptions for people as well from pharmacies, so people can get out to get their medication. We were able to do that. And it rumbled on, and to the extent that even when we were opening up again, people that were maybe a bit infirm to get out and about to the shops would just drop an email, and it became a regular point of contact. These maybe elderly people that live on their own, I think, enjoyed that face-to-face contact with someone from the club. I know the secretary went round and just kept it going, and just to engage with these people and make sure that they were okay, even after, as I say, the lockdown had finished. So yeah, I used to get emails in on a Friday of people, and there was a lady in Aberdeen who my mother lived in Nairn, and she would email in her list of stuff, and there seemed to be a bottle of gin on it every week, which makes her laugh. And the woman was a wee bit embarrassed to say, yes, I had in brackets, yes, I know it was on last week, another one. So the old lady in there and having the time of her life in lockdown by sound things. But no, it's just all these little things, and players got involved at the time as well. The players have been saving for an end of season trip as well. Obviously, like most clubs would probably do it at a part-time level, as a chip in a few quid or whatever a week, and go away at the end of the season, but obviously all that was up the spout when lockdown came in, so players donated all the funds they'd collected from that towards our coronavirus initiative. It was really successful and created a lot of ties to the club for people in the local community too that were maybe isolated otherwise.
That's what it's meant to be about. As I said, it's meant to be about making those ties. And then obviously the heritage elements for me are when it comes into the kits, like Michael said. One of my favourite kind of kits is, I think I've seen it once in an all black and the trim was like gold, but the kit basically had like the old OS street map of the town. They're my favourite kind of kits that have maps and stuff like that on them. I think they're brilliant. And as I said, it's kits that Nairn have really led the way with. And in particular, one initiative which a lot of our listeners might have seen, you guys will correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was a couple of years ago now, maybe about a year or so ago, that Nairn announced that every single primary 3 school pupil in the county, so about 6-7-year-olds, will receive a free Nairn County shirt. And that, to me, doesn't just show that the club is willing to invest in its future fan base and community, but the community are happy for them to do so, and you cannot ask for as perfect a synergy as that.
Yeah, no, it was something actually. Yeah, we announced probably about May, June time last year, and then managed to get it all actioned and out end of September this season. So, yeah, it was something, I'd seen, having worked in sports marketing for a number of years, seen the likes of Atalanta in Italy, who every newborn in Bergamo got an Atalanta shirt. Bologna did something recently. You've seen stuff in the States with baseball teams and things like that as well. But, we don't have the pockets or the funding to do those sort of level of things, and babies aren't born in their town and county hospital anymore. So, it's not... But, through my work, I'd learned that children will generally pick their team that they're going to support by the age of 9. So we thought we'd go in a little bit earlier to try and influence. Our objective's never to be anybody's real first team at that age. If we can, brilliant, but we want to, develop that association with the club from a younger age, be the second team for them, the one that they'll go and see, really.
Yeah.
On a daily basis. It takes a three and a bit hours to get down to Glasgow, or a 2 and a bit to get to Aberdeen, or 3 to get to Edinburgh. So it's going to be a while, a bit of a trek every weekend if you're going to support a Scottish Premiership team. And and unfortunately, by the nature of the beast in Scotland, is that outside Celtic and Rangers, I think the next most supported team UEFA research showed back in the day was Man United, and then it's Liverpool, and then it's so. Look, it needed a bit of investment, and we were in discussion with a new sponsor who, again, talk about connections to the town. Ivan Ralph's got a estate agent's solicitors practice within Edinburgh, but is a Nairn loon, really. Is, born and raised in Nairn, and wanted to give something back to the town. So he came on board. He was coming on board as a sponsor anyway, and I pitched this idea to him about this is something I've been wanting to do for a few years, and loved it. And it's just so happened, and it's just beautiful symmetry that it's lined up with our 50th anniversary year. And I think since I was at school, I severely underestimated, I think, how many primary 3 pupils there is in Nairnshire nowadays. But we even included Croy in Ardeshir, whose actual pupils don't even go to Nairn Academy when they get to secondary level. They go through to Culloden, but they're still part of that Nairnshire area and important to the club. And over 100 and, I can't even remember the number now, 140 potentially shirts that went out, and so well received. But it was just great hearing the stories, really, of hearing from parents who were saying, my kid's not taking it off all weekend. After school they're putting it on. We had already, through the community work that had been going on, and people like Kenny Spink, who's involved at the club, and the oversees the community football element. One of the things we changed maybe about 2 years ago, we changed it to all under 16s can get in free at the Station Park. Whereas if you actually look across the league and other places, it's under 12s, but we were like, no, we're going under 16s, because we know if we can get the parents there, more appealing to the parents, because they can take their kid in for free. While they're there, they'll spend some money. And, what we're seeing is there's a sea of colour at Station Park on a nice day. There's a lot more people wearing kits. We've never had so many kit sales. Merchandise sales are up. The paid attendances over the last 4 years, I think, are up 45% in Nairn County. Success on the pitch is not always married. Fortunate. We won the North of Scotland Cup for the first time in a while a few years ago, but there is a real engagement with town, and so this primary free shirt giveaway just was the next logical step to do that. Look, in an ideal world, we'd love to be able to get funding to do that every season, but to tie in nicely with the 50th anniversary, it was great, and we've got a lot of recognition. And look, there is clubs I know that at the higher you go up the pyramid are doing giveaways that maybe don't get the as much attention, but at our level, we're pretty unique or reasonably unique in doing these sort of things, and love to hopefully be able to do a lot more. But the focus on youth's been a big thing for us. The last few years we've been giving out player posters for free, to players, to get people more enticed with the team. And if using my background in the fortunate position and privileged position I was to be working in the Scottish FA, I know the research shows that if people know players, they're going to be more interested in following. So that has been, trying to raise the profile of our players to that younger audience. It's been great. So when we were doing the primary free shirt giveaways, a local player, somebody that went to school in the Nairnshire area, was there handing out the shirts to those players, to those kids as well. So again, just building that connection and strengthening that bond between player, club, and hopefully a future generation of Nairn County fans, players, and you never know, committee members or chairman.
Exactly. Unique's a good word. And I want to touch on something that you mentioned a wee bit back there. It doesn't really matter what happens on the pitch at the end of the day. And I think that's so true, because, you always get people that say the most important thing about football is the sport. And I completely disagree with that, because I think that a lot of clubs will quite happily use the excuse of, people aren't turning up because we're not playing well. But actually, that's more symptomatic of them having rested on their laurels, taking their fan base and their communities for granted. Whereas if you do these things, you show up for your community who show up for you. It doesn't matter whether you're performing well on the pitch or not. People will come and back you because you've backed them. That to me is kind of the point of it. That is what makes Nairn unique for me, is that, again, coming back to what we said earlier on, you've got clubs within the professional setup in Scotland in League 1 and 2 who have been middling for years. And Graeme, you mentioned Clyde. Clyde are obviously a hugely historic football club, but they've been treading water for a seriously long time, and part of the reason is their engagement with their fan base. To me, it shouldn't matter how well you're doing on the pitch, because even if you're having the worst season of your life, if you're playing so shit that no one wants to come and see you, people still do, because turning up is about supporting your football club.
Yeah, I think historically as well, I think Nairn's always had a loyal fan base. Like I touched on there when I went, I used to go in the 90s, and I can remember, I think, my very first game when it was Nairn against Wick Academy, and Nairn got a penalty. Goalkeeper saved the penalty. Player who took the penalty went to go and score the rebound, and was fouled again and awarded another penalty. The second penalty got put over the bar. And I think that was, like, if you were to sum up Nairn's 1990s, that would probably be it in a nutshell. So, but I still remember, like, the guys that went to the games, like, I was sort of went to an away game, primary school age, in the back of the car type thing. It's still the same guys. Like, I see that when we were at Rothes on Saturday, there, the same guys that would make those car journeys with us in the back in those days. So yeah, I think really a loyal fan base. As I say, back in the 90s, when the game you look forward to most was Fort William, because it was always might win today. It was always kind of between us and Fort William to avoid finishing bottom. Back in those days, maybe the more local connection was on the playing side as well, in that the players were all just local amateur guys that played in the local welfare league in the summertime in Nairn County throughout the winter. So the guys all, you kind of knew that, me as a Michael's case in point for Michael's point there, that if you know the players, it helps engage you. And I kind of knew all these guys from seeing them around the town, and were maybe friends with my dad and things like that. So yeah, that really helps engagement. But yeah, I think in there, we are fortunate as a club to have a loyal fan base. But that was 35 years ago. I'm talking about going to these games, and it's the same guys that are still going. But you've got to be conscious of the next generation coming along, and there's so many other distractions nowadays. Be it football on the TV. When our generation was young, it was. When you watched the Euros or the World Cup, it was always players you never heard of, and it was brilliant. And you got to know it, and maybe got one Champions League game on an ITV on a Wednesday night, and that was it. But now every 7-8-year-old knows who plays for all the big European teams and all that, know all the names and that nowadays, don't they? So yeah, it's how you engage these people to come and support Tier 5 Scottish football when they could be sat at home playing FIFA.
Yeah, that's actually a really, really good point. And it's like the same at probably most junior clubs up and down the country. I mean, my local juniors, the guys that go week in, week out, they're guys that have played for the club before. Everyone has their big team, obviously. I think there's one guy there who is an out-and-out Lanark United fan, which is class, fair enough. But again, they go because going to see the big team isn't accessible for them anymore. But there's not really an effort to bring new people in because the club has just kind of accepted its fate as, we'll keep kind of churning out the same 40, 50 odd guys and the cycle will just continue every year sort of thing. Whereas making that effort to actually go out and engage with the future fans is so important. I think Peterhead actually were a pretty good example of it because they built basically a shed end for their ultras group. I think there's been a few issues around there recently, but that was their kind of first step in engaging with their young fan base, was saying, you guys want to come to games and make noise, so we'll give you a place where you can do that. That's class. That's how you do it.
Yeah, at the top end and the elite end of football at the moment in time, there is a big transitional period going on, and there's more and more switching off. Just because whether it's VAR, whether it's saturation, the game's got too analytical, the game's got whatever it is, at that there's too much money. Where we'll hopefully benefit from that is that if you go to the Highland League, and I'm sure Lanark United and wherever else, it is a bit of a nostalgia trip. The chances are we're going to play with wingers. There's going to be a number 9 there that's going to score goals. There's going to be no VAR. There's going to be entertainment. I think I figured it out. When I was doing the primary free shirt giveaway. Now, don't know what it says. We've had plenty of clean sheets in this time. I'm just going to caveat that. But I think we've had 1-0 at Station Park in 4 years. People want to be entertained by football, and unfortunately at the top end, why try to get too much on a soapbox? It seems to be going the opposite way. But Highland League, non-league level, lower league, whether it's England or Scottish football, there's entertainment to be had, and I think that's only going to benefit clubs like us, is that people still want to be engaged in football, still want to follow football. They just want a proper experience, and hopefully, we always try to do that at Station Park.
And it's quite funny you said that, because on Saturday I was watching, it was Lanark, we were playing Thornywood, who had a team from View Park in Uddingston. It was 0-0, coming up to half-time, freezing cold, and it was a really proper junior football game, and the old boy behind me was buzzing because he said, I've not seen a proper junior game like this in so long, and he was loving it because it was just blood and thunder tackles, balls getting lumped all over the place. And you're right, it is that nostalgia thing. We've mentioned nostalgia on here a lot before, but sometimes that is just what people want. They want that bit of a callback to how it used to be, and I think we are seeing that a lot more in how people support the clubs. But what is next for Nairn County then? You've told us about the impact that all this community outreach has had, which is an incredible, tangible thing to be able to show people. You've told us about the plans for the kits. What's the next stage for the football club and where they're at just now?
I think that there's 3 elements to it, really. There's, we touched upon the community and how that's going to be build that, structure, formalising that a little bit more, infrastructure-wise around Station Park, and we are on a pretty small footprint for a football stadium. There's parts of our ground that are pretty narrow if you're trying to walk around the corner flags, and that hampers the revenue that you can generate through hospitality and whatever else. So longer term there'll probably be a bit of focus on there. But look, we're under no illusions that we want to do well on the pitch. We are ambitious. The committee and board of directors are ambitious, and Graeme and the football guys as well will have our ambitious guys that want to do as best as we can, and we want to win more silverware. And I think the community and everything that we do as a club, we want to do for the town, but we also want to bring success. We also want to, what we've been looking at as a committee and as a wider club at the moment in time is financially because we're all self-sustaining. Things have been put in place with the club that nobody can come in and buy the club, and if you want to sell off bits of the land, you have to go through so many hoops to make that happen. Just to protect the club. But we also want to succeed. We've won one Highland League title in the whole history of the club, and that was 50 years ago. And we all dream that we can get to a point. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen, but we want to get to a point that we are competing at further up the table, winning more silverware, and the dream is an amazing Scottish Cup run.
I think that is kind of hit the nail on the head. It's like you obviously want to be successful, and a lot of the things that you're doing will lead to that success eventually, but ultimately priority number one is sustaining the football club and making sure that people are feeling connected with the football club.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I think for me, it's everything's got to be sustainable going forward. I mean, the club, we're only passing through. At the end of the day, we're just custodians of the club. It's been around for 117 years. It's our job to make sure that there's stable foundations for it to be around for another 117 years.
Yeah, absolutely. Guys, this has been a fantastic conversation. Thank you very much for joining me tonight. Is there anything else that you would like to add just before we finish up?
If you've not been to a Highland League game, I know a great club, guaranteed a friendly welcome. But no, in all seriousness, I think Nairn is a great away day. And, as Graeme said, we're called Station Park for a reason. There is a train station literally outside our front door. It's very close to Inverness. We're on the train line from Aberdeen, and check out our kits and let Nairn become your Highland League team. We would greatly appreciate your support.
Just as Michael says, we're one of the most accessible Highland League teams there is. I don't think there is a train station closer to a ground anywhere in the Highland League. Maybe even, I don't know, I'm struggling to think of any in Scotland, but get yourself along. The ground itself is always very well presented. You talked there about being at a windy, blustery place that's very well enclosed at Station Park, comfortable surroundings. Hopefully you will enjoy your experience, and as Michael says, maybe adopt Nairn County as your second team or your Highland League team.
That's about as good a sale as you're likely to see in this podcast, I think. Guys, thank you very much once again for joining me tonight, and thank you very much to all of our listeners who've tuned in to hear about one of the most exciting clubs in Scottish football at the moment. Of course, this episode came about because Michael emailed us just out of the blue, so if there is anything that you want to suggest in terms of topics you want to cover, then please do get in touch with us. If there's any questions about this episode, you can DM us on our social media. You can email us at hello@footballheritage.co.uk as well. We'll see you all again next week. Goodbye.